Why wasn't Michelle Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral? For a woman who has always stood at the forefront of public life, this absence was startling, especially considering the deep respect and admiration she had for the late president. As the nation mourned, Michelle's decision to remain on vacation in Hawaii raised many questions. Could she have attended, even briefly, to honor Carter's legacy? Was her absence truly a matter of personal rest, or was there something more to this decision? And how do we reconcile her right to take a break with the public duty expected of someone with such a powerful influence? This is a story that digs into the complexity of duty, personal choices, and the expectations placed on public figures. On January 9, 2025, the nation gathered to mourn the passing of Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States. At 100 years old, Carter was not only the oldest living U.S. president, but also one of the most admired figures in modern political history. His funeral was a monumental event, attended by a who's who of political leaders from both sides of the aisle. President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, former President Barack Obama, and President-elect Donald Trump were all present to pay their respects. The atmosphere was somber, yet there was a sense of unity as these figures from different political backgrounds stood side by side, honoring the legacy of a man who dedicated much of his life to peace and humanitarian work. However, amidst this gathering of prominent leaders, one notable figure was conspicuously absent. Michelle Obama, the former First Lady and a beloved public figure, was not there. Given her long-standing public service, her absence at such an important event raised eyebrows. After all, it wasn't just any funeral. It was for Jimmy Carter, a former president who had forged a reputation for his humanitarian efforts and his ability to bridge political divides. So why wasn't Michelle Obama in attendance? At first, the absence of the former First Lady seemed puzzling. Most of the other political figures present were accompanied by their spouses, but Michelle Obama was nowhere to be found. The media quickly took notice, and speculation began to swirl. What could have kept her from attending such a significant occasion? Was there a personal reason behind her absence, or was it something more complicated? In response to the growing curiosity, Michelle Obama's spokesperson, Crystal Carson, released a statement. According to the statement, Michelle Obama had been unable to attend due to a scheduling conflict. The reason given was that she was on an extended vacation in Hawaii. It seemed simple enough, a scheduling conflict. But for many, the timing of it all made it harder to accept as a mere coincidence. Could the timing of this vacation, one that had her in Hawaii at the same time as Carter's funeral, really explain her absence, or was there something more to it? The phrase scheduling conflict is one that can be easily used to explain away any absence. It's neutral, vague, and doesn't delve into specifics. But in this case, it only seemed to spark more questions than it answered. Why would Michelle Obama, who had such a strong relationship with Jimmy Carter and his family, allow a simple scheduling conflict to keep her from attending his funeral? Was it really a matter of timing, or did it run deeper? For those who knew Michelle Obama's history with Carter, her absence was especially notable. Over the years, Michelle had often spoken about the profound impact Carter's work had on her, particularly his post-presidential efforts in humanitarian causes. Michelle and her husband, Barack Obama, had always admired Carter's work with the Carter Center, his dedication to human rights, and his efforts to promote peace worldwide. In fact, Carter had been a frequent figure in the Obama family's political landscape, with Michelle attending events with him and expressing admiration for his lifelong commitment to service. It's worth considering the nature of Michelle Obama's absence in the context of her long-standing admiration for Jimmy Carter. The Carters were not only political figures, but also mentors and role models. Michelle's absence at this moment was more than just a missed funeral. It felt like a missed opportunity for connection, for honoring a man who had given so much to the world. Given their shared values, many wondered why she wouldn't have made the effort to attend, even if only briefly, to pay her respects. As the media speculated about the reason behind Michelle's absence, the narrative quickly turned to the personal side of the story. The official statement about a scheduling conflict may have offered a plausible explanation, but it failed to quell the questions. Could it really be so simple? Was Michelle's extended vacation in Hawaii the true reason she wasn't at the funeral, or was there something else at play? Michelle Obama's choice to remain in Hawaii during such an important moment in American history seemed, at the very least, unusual. After all, Michelle and Barack Obama had spent considerable time in Hawaii before, as it was the former president's home state. The couple even purchased a property there in 2015, a luxurious 3-acre retreat in Oahu. This property had become a place of rest and privacy for the Obamas, especially after leaving the White House. It offered them a chance to step away from the public eye and reconnect with their personal lives. The fact that Michelle was on vacation at this property while her husband attended the funeral only added to the intrigue. For many, the choice to stay in Hawaii was not so surprising. It made sense that the former First Lady would want to enjoy some time away from the pressures of public life. However, given the timing of the funeral and her close relationship with the Carters, her decision to skip the event raised more questions than it answered. It's important to consider that Michelle Obama was under no obligation to attend the funeral. As a former First Lady, she was no longer bound by the same expectations of public duty that defined her time in the White House. She had, after all, already stepped back from the spotlight to some degree. But with such a historic moment unfolding, one that involved the passing of a former president who had been an influential figure in American politics and global peace, her absence was hard to overlook. As the day of the funeral went on, many couldn't help but feel the absence of Michelle Obama. The media focus naturally turned toward the other high-profile attendees, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. But Michelle's decision not to attend continued to linger in the background. The more people thought about it, the more it seemed like her absence was about more than just a scheduling conflict. The public's reaction to Michelle Obama's absence was mixed. Some people understood her desire for privacy and rest. After all, she had given so much of herself to public service over the years. Others, however, were disappointed by her decision. They saw it as an opportunity missed, a chance to honor the legacy of a man who had dedicated his life to service, much like the Obamas themselves had done. The contrast between Michelle Obama's absence and the presence of Barack Obama and other political figures only added to the tension, making it a subject of discussion across media outlets and social platforms. While the official statement about Michelle's absence may have offered a reasonable explanation, the deeper questions remained. Why was she really not at the funeral? What role did her vacation play in her decision? And was there more to it than simply needing a break? In response to the growing curiosity surrounding Michelle Obama's absence, her spokesperson, Crystal Carson, provided a statement to clarify the situation. The statement confirmed that Michelle Obama was not in attendance at Jimmy Carter's funeral, offering her thoughts and prayers to the Carter family. It also mentioned that Michelle was on an extended vacation in Hawaii, which at first glance seemed like a reasonable explanation for her absence. A simple scheduling conflict and a desire for rest after years of public service. However, as the media buzzed and speculation mounted, the vagueness of the statement left more questions than answers. The official explanation that Michelle Obama was on vacation during the funeral made sense to some, but for many others, it felt like a convenient way of avoiding the deeper issue. Michelle and Barack Obama had long been admired for their sense of duty to the public. So why would Michelle opt to stay in Hawaii during such a significant moment in American history? The timing of her vacation, coincidentally coinciding with Jimmy Carter's funeral, was hard to overlook. Could she have made an exception, especially considering her personal connection to Carter and the respect she had often shown him? For anyone familiar with Michelle Obama's life, this decision seemed out of character. She had always been dedicated to her work, and despite stepping away from the political spotlight after leaving the White House, she had maintained an active presence in public life. In fact, she had previously shown immense respect for Carter, often praising his humanitarian work and dedication to causes that aligned with her own values. The Carters had been more than just political figures. They had been mentors and role models for the Obamas. The bond between the families had always been clear, and Michelle had often spoken about how much she admired the former president, especially for his commitment to human rights and peace. It was this close relationship that made Michelle's absence even more puzzling. While it's true that public figures like Michelle Obama are not obligated to attend every major event, the funeral of a former president, a man whose influence spanned decades, felt like one of those moments where duty and respect for the past should take precedence. Many began to wonder whether there was more to her absence than simply a well-timed vacation. The explanation about her scheduling conflict didn't seem to account for the broader context of her absence. Michelle Obama's vacation had been planned long before the funeral, but the question remained: could she have adjusted her schedule even briefly to honor Carter's legacy? Given her deep connection to the Carters, it seemed odd that Michelle would miss such a moment, especially when her husband, Barack Obama, was present at the funeral, along with so many other political leaders. The absence of the former First Lady, in contrast to the attendance of everyone else, felt stark and left room for speculation. But it wasn't just the timing of her vacation that seemed to fuel the curiosity. The vacation itself, Michelle Obama's retreat to Hawaii, had long been a place of solace for the family. Since purchasing the property on Oahu in 2015, the Obamas had enjoyed numerous stays there, seeking refuge from the intense scrutiny that came with their public lives. It was more than just a holiday spot. It was a sanctuary, a place where the family could relax and escape the pressures of their high-profile existence. The 3-acre property was private and luxurious, a far cry from the public demands of the White House. With its ocean views and ample space for privacy, it was the perfect location for a much-needed break. For Michelle, the allure of Hawaii likely held even more weight. After years of public service, stepping away from the spotlight for a while seemed like a reasonable decision, especially given the intensity of her role as First Lady. The retreat in Hawaii provided her with an opportunity to unwind and focus on herself, something that was undoubtedly important to her. In this light, her decision to stay on vacation while the funeral took place could be seen as an attempt to preserve some semblance of personal time, something she had earned after years of sacrifice. Still, the fact that she was on vacation at the time of the funeral only added fuel to the fire. The decision to remain in Hawaii rather than make the journey to Georgia to honor Carter was a choice that had not gone unnoticed. While some understood her need for rest, others questioned why she couldn't have attended for just a few hours, especially considering how pivotal this event was for the nation. If anything, it seemed like an opportunity for Michelle to show solidarity with her husband and fellow leaders at a time when the country was coming together to honor a beloved former president. As the media continued to scrutinize the situation, more people began to weigh in on the matter. Some saw Michelle's decision as a personal one that reflected her desire for privacy and peace. After all, she had always been a highly visible public figure, and moments of solitude were rare for someone in her position. Others, however, felt that the public nature of the funeral warranted a stronger commitment, especially considering Michelle's personal connection to Carter and the Obama family's respect for him. The media naturally focused on Michelle's absence, sparking a range of reactions. Some defended her right to personal time and space, acknowledging that she had dedicated much of her life to public service and was entitled to a break. Others, however, criticized her for what they saw as a missed opportunity to honor Carter's legacy. In the world of politics and public life, the line between personal choice and public duty is often blurred. Michelle Obama's absence at such a significant event brought this dynamic into sharp focus, forcing many to reconsider the balance between private and public life. For Michelle, the choice to stay in Hawaii likely wasn't an easy one, even if it appeared to be a simple matter of scheduling. It was a decision that reflected the complex nature of her public life, one that required her to constantly balance personal desires with the expectations placed on her by the public. And while some might argue that her absence was justified, it would likely remain a subject of debate, especially given her connection to Carter and the public role she had once held. The explanation offered, vacation and scheduling conflict, seemed to only raise more questions. Could Michelle have made the funeral a priority, even if it meant cutting her vacation short? What role did her personal desire for rest play in her decision? These were questions that the public would continue to ask, as Michelle Obama's absence at Jimmy Carter's funeral became a focal point in the media. The answer, of course, was never going to be simple, but in the end, it was a decision that spoke volumes about the complexities of public service and the need for personal space, even for the most high-profile public figures. Michelle Obama's extended vacation in Hawaii was not just a break from the spotlight. It was a significant part of her life since her family's purchase of the property on Oahu in 2015. The Obamas had always maintained a deep connection to Hawaii, with Barack Obama being born there, making the island a place of personal and familial importance. The 3-acre property they owned became a refuge, a sanctuary far removed from the public eye, offering them a rare opportunity to experience life outside the confines of the political world. The property itself was more than just a vacation home. It was a symbol of the Obamas' post-presidential life, a place where they could reclaim their privacy after years of public service. With sprawling views of the Pacific Ocean and lush gardens, the house was a peaceful retreat that allowed the family to recharge away from the intense media scrutiny they had endured while in office. The Obamas, especially Michelle, had spent much of their time in the White House under constant public observation, and the allure of a quiet getaway in Hawaii was not just a luxury, it was a necessity for their well-being. For Michelle, the opportunity to unwind on her terms was important. The demands of being First Lady, coupled with the responsibilities that came after leaving office, had taken a toll. Although Michelle had remained active in the public sphere, authoring books, giving speeches, and advocating for various causes, she had also made a conscious effort to prioritize herself. The choice to remain in Hawaii, away from the funeral and the world of politics, was likely driven by the need for rest and reflection. After all, public service has been an all-consuming role, and even former First Ladies deserve the space to focus on their personal lives. It wasn't just about escaping the media frenzy or the constant demands of being in the public eye. Michelle Obama's connection to Hawaii had always been deeply personal. It wasn't just the physical beauty of the island that attracted the Obamas, it was the sense of peace and normalcy it provided. Their time in Hawaii allowed them to engage in activities they could never experience while in the White House. Whether it was enjoying quiet moments with family or taking long walks along the beach, Hawaii was a place where they could simply be themselves, free from the expectations and pressures that came with their public lives. But with Michelle's absence at the funeral, many were left wondering if this personal time was truly the deciding factor. Could she have rearranged her schedule even briefly to pay respects to a man she had so much admiration for? The timing was striking, with Carter's funeral falling right in the middle of her vacation. Could Michelle have made an exception for such a pivotal event in American history, especially considering her close ties to the Carter family? For some, the answer was clear: she could have. After all, the funeral of a former president was no small occasion, and the Obamas had a long history of respecting the contributions of their predecessors, particularly Carter. Yet for Michelle, perhaps it wasn't just about the funeral itself. It was about the balance between public duty and personal life, a balance she had navigated for years. Having spent much of her life in the public eye, Michelle was entitled to moments of solitude, and Hawaii represented the opportunity for her to step away from the demands of being in the public spotlight. She had already given so much to the country, wasn't she entitled to some time for herself? At the same time, there was an undeniable sense of missed opportunity in her decision. The funeral of Jimmy Carter was more than just a political event. It was a time to reflect on his legacy and the impact he had on the world. Carter had spent decades promoting human rights, peace, and equality, values that Michelle Obama had championed throughout her own public career. Her absence felt like a missed chance for her to personally acknowledge that shared legacy. As the nation came together to honor Carter's life, Michelle's absence felt like an emotional gap, one that many found hard to reconcile given her deep admiration for the former president. The question then became whether Michelle Obama's decision was driven purely by personal desire for rest, or whether there were other factors at play. The scheduling conflict seemed to offer a simple explanation, but it didn't fully account for the complexities of the situation. After all, this wasn't just another event. It was a historic moment in American politics, one that marked the end of an era. The fact that Michelle chose to stay in Hawaii during this time suggested that she had made a conscious decision to prioritize herself over participating in what many saw as an important collective moment of respect for a man who had done so much for the country. As the days passed, the public's reaction to Michelle's absence grew more divided. Some saw it as a well-deserved break, recognizing that Michelle, like many public figures, had earned the right to take time for herself. She had spent 8 years in the White House, enduring the pressures of being the First Lady, and since leaving office, she had continued to carry a heavy public responsibility. For those who understood the demands of such a life, Michelle's decision to stay on vacation seemed justified. She had worked tirelessly for years, and perhaps this was simply a moment for her to step back and recharge. Others, however, felt that the situation was more complicated. The public and media alike scrutinized Michelle's absence, with many questioning whether she should have made an exception. Given her relationship with the Carter family and the importance of the occasion, some believed she could have rearranged her schedule, even for a short while, to pay her respects. The funeral was an event that transcended politics. It was about honoring a man who had devoted his life to public service. And for some, Michelle's absence felt like a slight, an oversight in a moment that called for unity and reflection. The truth, as with many things in the public eye, was likely somewhere in between. Michelle Obama's decision to remain in Hawaii was undoubtedly influenced by her personal need for rest and time away. At the same time, the complexity of the situation, her deep connection to Carter, her respect for his legacy, and the national significance of the funeral suggested that her absence wasn't a simple decision. It was a choice that reflected the balance between her personal life and public expectations, a dynamic that all public figures, especially former First Ladies, are familiar with. As the world continued to reflect on Carter's life and the political figures who attended his funeral, Michelle's absence remained a topic of conversation. Some understood her need for time off, while others continued to question whether she could have found a way to honor Carter's legacy while also taking care of her own. In the end, her decision was just another example of the complexities that come with being a public figure, one that had earned Michelle Obama the right to both rest and the occasional scrutiny. Michelle Obama's absence at Jimmy Carter's funeral was not only significant because of her personal relationship with the former president, but also because of the broader context surrounding it. The Obama family had long held Carter in high regard. Barack Obama and Jimmy Carter shared a mutual respect, particularly for Carter's dedication to humanitarian efforts and his tireless work post-presidency. Michelle, too, had often praised Carter for his commitment to global peace and his efforts to address human rights issues. The Carters' dedication to making the world a better place mirrored Michelle's own values and the causes she championed during her time as First Lady. Their shared commitment to service had been a consistent theme throughout Michelle Obama's public career. In fact, she had frequently spoken about her admiration for the Carters, particularly their work with the Carter Center, which focused on global health, democracy, and peace building. For Michelle, attending the funeral of a man whose work she had so openly praised seemed like a natural act of respect. Yet, despite her personal connection to the Carters and the significance of the event, she chose to stay in Hawaii. This decision was puzzling for many, especially in light of the fact that other prominent political figures, including Barack Obama, made the effort to attend the funeral. Barack's presence was notable, as he sat alongside political adversaries like Donald Trump, an image that seemed to embody the spirit of unity that Carter had always championed. The two former presidents were seen conversing amicably, sharing a laugh before the ceremony began, a rare and unexpected moment of civility in the often polarized world of politics. But while Barack Obama participated in this moment of political camaraderie, Michelle remained absent, leaving many to wonder why she chose not to join in the collective expression of respect for Carter's legacy. The Obama family's bond with the Carters had always been strong, and Michelle's absence at such an important moment was seen by some as a missed opportunity for unity. The funeral of a former president is a rare event that brings together people from all walks of life, and in this case, it felt like a moment where the focus should have been on honoring Carter's remarkable life, not on personal choices. For those who saw Michelle's absence as a slight, it was difficult to reconcile her decision with the public service she had so passionately embraced throughout her life. After all, wasn't this the kind of event that would have benefited from her presence not just as a political figure but as someone who had shared a deep respect for Carter's contributions? There was also the matter of the broader political context. Carter's funeral was more than just an opportunity for personal reflection. It was a reminder of the values that had defined his presidency and the impact he had made on the world. His commitment to peace, human rights, and democracy had influenced generations of leaders, including the Obamas. His funeral wasn't just about remembering a past president. It was about honoring a legacy of service, a legacy that transcended political affiliations and personal disagreements. For Michelle Obama, whose own legacy was deeply tied to her work advocating for children, education, and equality, it seemed as though this was a moment where she could have connected with those shared values and shown her respect for Carter's work. But of course, there were other considerations. Michelle Obama had spent much of her adult life in the public eye, and her decision to take time away from the spotlight was not one that could be easily overlooked. In a world where public figures are often expected to be everywhere at once, choosing personal time over public duty is a decision that doesn't come without its consequences. Many public figures, especially those as prominent as Michelle Obama, have to navigate the delicate balance between fulfilling the expectations of the public and taking time for themselves. This moment in Hawaii, though it may have seemed like an indulgence to some, could have been her way of reclaiming some sense of normalcy in a world that had always demanded so much of her. Yet, this decision also raised questions about the expectations we place on public figures. It's easy to forget that these individuals, while often seen as symbols of duty and service, are still human beings with personal lives, feelings, and needs. Michelle Obama had given so much of herself to the public over the years, through her work as First Lady, her advocacy, and her continued public appearances since leaving the White House. She had earned the right to take a break, to find some peace in a place that had become a sanctuary for her. Still, her absence at Carter's funeral seemed to highlight the ongoing tension between personal desires and public expectations. The media response to Michelle's absence was a mix of understanding and criticism. On one hand, many people recognized the need for her to have private time, acknowledging the incredible demands of her role as First Lady and the ongoing responsibilities she carried even after leaving the White House. She had worked tirelessly for years, and a break seemed like a well-deserved necessity. On the other hand, there were those who felt that given her deep connection to Carter and his legacy, she should have prioritized attending the funeral, even if it meant adjusting her plans. Ultimately, Michelle Obama's decision was a reflection of the complex nature of public life. For some, it may have seemed like an opportunity missed, a chance to honor a man who had done so much for the country. But for others, it was a reminder that even the most public figures deserve moments of rest and reflection. Whether or not her absence was the right decision, only Michelle could truly know the full weight of that choice. As the funeral continued, the conversation around Michelle Obama's absence remained a topic of public interest. Some may have questioned her decision, while others may have understood it. But in the end, her choice was a reminder that even the most visible public figures must make decisions that reflect both their public responsibilities and their personal needs. As the world reflected on Carter's life and legacy, Michelle's absence remained a quiet but significant part of the story, a choice that, like all decisions in the public eye, would continue to be debated for years to come. As the public continued to react to Michelle Obama's absence from Jimmy Carter's funeral, opinions were mixed. Some defended her right to prioritize her personal time, understanding that public figures, especially those who have given so much to the country, need moments of respite. Michelle Obama had already dedicated much of her life to public service, and after leaving the White House, she had managed to maintain a significant presence in the world. Her decision to stay in Hawaii, away from the national spotlight, seemed like a well-deserved break from the pressures that had been a constant part of her existence. She had written books, delivered speeches, and supported causes, always staying engaged with the public. Perhaps this moment in Hawaii was simply her time to step back and focus on herself. On the other hand, some felt that Michelle's absence was more significant than just a personal decision. Given her deep respect for Jimmy Carter and his legacy, many believed she should have made the effort to attend the funeral, even if it meant cutting her vacation short. For them, the funeral wasn't just a political event, it was a national moment of reflection. A time for the country to come together and honor the life of a former president who had spent decades working to make the world a better place. With Barack Obama attending the funeral, the absence of his wife seemed like a glaring omission. Even though the reasons for her absence were explained, many still felt that the situation was more complex than it appeared at first glance. The funeral was not just a ceremonial gathering, it was a reflection of values that transcended political affiliations. Carter had spent his post-presidential years advocating for global health, human rights, and peace, causes that were dear to Michelle Obama's heart. It seemed like a moment when Michelle, as someone who had championed similar causes during her time in the White House and beyond, could have shown her solidarity. Her absence left some questioning whether she had missed an opportunity to connect with those shared values, to be part of a collective moment where the focus was on the legacy of a man who had worked tirelessly for the greater good. But public life is never that simple. Michelle Obama's decision to remain in Hawaii spoke to a deeper reality that many public figures face: the constant balancing act between personal life and public duty. For years, Michelle had been in the public eye, and despite stepping back from the most visible parts of her role, she was still an influential figure, with expectations placed upon her. When she made the decision to stay in Hawaii, it wasn't just about missing a funeral. It was about the larger question of where she stood in relation to the ongoing expectations of public figures. She had given so much to the country, and now she was taking the time to care for herself, to disconnect from the pressure that came with being in the public spotlight. For some, Michelle's absence was a reminder that public figures are entitled to moments of rest, to decide when they want to step back from their responsibilities. After all, Michelle had given so much of herself to the American people. Whether it was through her initiatives on education, healthy living, or her advocacy for women and girls, Michelle had shaped the conversation in meaningful ways. Her absence at Carter's funeral didn't erase her contributions or diminish her respect for his legacy. It simply underscored the complexity of balancing public service with personal needs. Still, for others, it was a reminder that even public figures like Michelle Obama are not immune to scrutiny. While it was understood that she had every right to take time for herself, the decision not to attend the funeral raised questions about the place of duty in public life. Was it a misstep to prioritize personal time over honoring a national hero? Did Michelle miss an opportunity to reinforce the values she had worked so hard to promote during her time in the White House? These were the questions that continued to linger in the wake of the funeral. As the days passed, the conversation around Michelle Obama's absence began to shift. Some found understanding in her choice, recognizing that even the most committed public figures need time for self-care. Others, however, continued to feel that her absence was a missed opportunity for unity, for showing the kind of leadership and solidarity that had defined her tenure as First Lady. Whatever the public's opinion, Michelle's decision was a reminder of the challenges faced by public figures in navigating the expectations of the world with their own personal needs. In the end, Michelle Obama's absence at Jimmy Carter's funeral was more than just about one woman's choice. It was about the complex dynamics of public service, personal life, and the often unseen pressures that come with being in the public eye. Her decision, while difficult for some to understand, highlighted the need for balance in a world where the demands of public duty often compete with the necessity of personal rest. For Michelle, it was a decision that spoke to the importance of reclaiming time for oneself, but it was also a decision that would continue to spark debate as it touched on the intersection of legacy, duty, and personal agency. Though her absence remained a topic of discussion, it was clear that Michelle Obama's legacy, like Jimmy Carter's, was built on a foundation of service, compassion, and the belief in a better world. In time, her decision to stay in Hawaii would fade into the background, but the values she and Carter shared would endure, continuing to inspire those who sought to make a difference. In the end, Michelle Obama's absence was just one chapter in a much larger story of public service, personal growth, and the ongoing challenge of finding balance in a world that constantly demands more. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.